Alright, so I saw a lot of videos today regarding Big Sean, and Big Sean is corny and he's trash, and a lot of people have different opinions. But in my opinion, there are a lot of people who fail to actually prove their point with facts. So in my opinion, the biggest problem with Big Sean is his voice. Uh, what I mean by that is when he says certain shit, it comes across as corny. Like the same lyrics, maybe someone like Two Chains can make it sound cool. Maybe someone like Lil Wayne can make it sound cool. But as for Big Sean, when Big Sean says those things, it comes across corny to me at least because of his voice, the way he says certain stuff. Like on his new album, the Double or Nothing album, there were a lot of lines that were not that bad, but they were dragged because it was Big Sean. Yet the album he released in January, I think the February album, I decided was a very solid, cohesive album. But everyone failed to mention it in their top 10 list, top 5 list. Yeah, I do get that there are a lot of good hip hop releases this year, but I think Big Sean does deserve a spot on there. And as for me, I have put him in at least his album might be in the top 8, top 9. So I've not heard a lot of people say that his voice is corny. They are just highlighting the fact that he doesn't have a character, or he's corny, or he has no lyrical ability. For the people who say that he doesn't have any lyrical ability, should go and check out his verses on Kanye West or Good Music compilation albums, where he has laid a lot of good verses, a lot of good flows. For example, Click, there was not a verse on there, but Big Sean bring, I think, the song had charisma, and it was catchy because of Big Sean's hook. But this is the world we live in, where if you do something bad, it overshadows your good. Let's say someone like Two Chains. On his debut album, he was kind of a funny type of dude. He made a lot of jokes and a lot of funny bars and a lot of funny lines in journal that made you laugh. But in my opinion, it affected Two Chains' career in a bad way as well, because of his character, because of how he presented himself in the beginning. All people expected from Two Chains was funny bars, so no one took him as a serious rapper. When he released his latest album, there were funny bars here and there tucked in there, but they were subtle. They were not prominent. So why I used Two Chains example was because of the reason that people, when you start your career with an impact, people actually expect a lot from you in the future. So speaking of future, let's talk about Future Hendrix for a minute. So he started with Tony Montana, his debut album Pluto. I think it sold 13,000, 14,000 copies. Then he repackaged that album Pluto 3D. Then he again came with the second album Honest. It failed to hit number 1 as well. I think it sold 56,000, something like that, or it was number 2 on the Billboard 200. And then he broke up with Sierra. Then he went on to release the trilogy of mixtapes that were very well received, and those were very good mixtapes. Then he went out and released DS2, Dirty Sprite 2, which did phenomenal numbers. All of the singles were just extraordinary. He built his fan base. Then he released What a Time to Be Alive, which I still play to this date. It sold, I think, 336, almost 400,000 copies. And then the next year, Evil, it also sold, I think, 140, 150, something like that. Then this year, back-to-back number 1 albums. The first one sold 140 first week, the second one 130, 128, second album. So what I'm saying is, not all of the artists can actually evolve. we expect a lot from artists. Like if an artist has put out a good or phenomenal or either a classic debut album, doesn't mean he can follow up with a debut with a classic album again. Like not everyone is Kanye West, not everyone is Notorious B.I.G. Look at Jay Z, for example. He put out Reasonable Doubt, which a lot of people consider classic. It was a very, of course, good album, and I wouldn't argue with someone saying that it is a classic. Then he released Volume 1, which is disregarded. No one talks about The Hard Knock Life. I'm sorry if I'm messing up the title. So, the Volume 1 didn't stick around that much. The Volume 2 was good. The Volume 3 didn't stick that much. Then the Nas beef happened. Then he released the classic, The Blueprint. All right. Then he went out to release another classic, Black Album. So I'm using Jay Z as an example. Like he built his stuff. He built his empire. Look at where Jay Z is right now. Like I wouldn't expect a 47-year-old rapper to sell like 300,000 first week, but he did. But he did sell that much. Look at a person like Rick Ross. He still sells album. Look at someone like Pusha T, who came. He came back. He at least he's been in the game at least for 20 years. Like he was with the Click. I'm sorry, I mean the Clips. Then he parted ways, and then he came into their rap game as a solo act. Then in 2013 he released a debut album, went number one, I guess. The second album also went number one. So there is a lot we expect from artists. I was off topic, I know, but I just wanted to explain my point that when someone makes an immediate action on the immediate impact on the culture, people people in general expect a lot from a person. Big Sean's debut album was not that good. Big Sean's second studio album was not that good either. I think Dark Sky Paradise was his third album, and that was a pretty good album. And Detroit before that was great, phenomenal. Let's say someone like Kanye. Jesus in 2013 was a extremely underrated project in my opinion. Like it was experimental Kanye at its peak, but all of you criticized and disregarded the album. You know why? Because he came from a run like four straight classic albums. I don't think a lot of people will argue like four straight classic albums. College Dropout, 808 and Heartbreaks, Graduation, and My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. Like four straight classic albums, and then all of us expected a classic again. And it might be a classic sound wise, but people won't admit. And I'm not dissing anyone, but if let's say someone like Future would have put out an album like The Life of Pablo, like people would consider or say that Future is the greatest rapper of all time. That's the thing. And when Kanye West released that album, no one, I haven't seen a lot of people actually talk about that album till this day. Like it's only been 1.5 year, I guess. And the way he put out the album, and he keep changing the album again and again and again, was genius. Like words can't explain how genius of an act that was. And plus the problem with Big Sean, I also think, is that he doesn't have a lot of label support in my opinion. Yeah, I know his last album I decided was supported by the highest charting single he had, but I don't know, good music, they are not promoting a lot of they are not promoting the artists. Like let's say for example, Designer came up with Panda. He was on the Life of Pablo album. I think he was featured two times. So then he released Panda, went number one, the biggest song. It had a lot of crossover success. Even here in Saudi Arabia, a lot of people listened to that song. A lot of people knew that song. So in my opinion, that should have been followed with at least two more hits and an album afterwards. But till now, none of the singles he released have caught up. Like none of the singles blew up like Panda. But they didn't have to blow up. Let's say someone like Cardi B, she released her first single. All right, her label is treating her the best way they could. Alright, the first single, went number one, started to go down. She was featured on a couple of songs. Then, one of the biggest songs of 2017, the No Limit record, G-Eazy record, she was featured on that. Then she was featured on More Sport, which was also one of the biggest records of this year. It was number 14 on the Billboard charts. So, in my opinion, designer was not treated the way Cardi B is treated at the time being. Like designer was not featured on a lot of songs. Designer wasn't making moves like Cardi B is. I think what they could have done with designer is, they could have him being featured on a couple of songs and big songs. And in like when Panda was released, there was a lot of future designer kind of hype, where a lot of people compared him to future. And I think they should have capitalized off of that momentum. Maybe they should have started a beef or something, a fake beef, or maybe they should have collaborated future and designer. That would help designer. Like, it boils down to two or three points in my opinion. uh First, his voice can sometimes be, well, a lot of times, cringy, or non-bearable. And the fact that the label doesn't support Big Sean as much as they should. And for those of you who think that Big Sean doesn't have a character, I would like to ask, if Big Sean doesn't have a character, how can he come out and sell 155, 160,000 records, whereas a person like Sci-Hi, the Prince, who is also on good music, isn't selling shit? Like, he made the classic with Kanye, the Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. He has released classic projects. He has released phenomenal projects. His debut album, which was released this year, it was phenomenal. I still play that album. Every time I play it, I every time catch a new bar, a new line. That is how great the new Sahai album was. But it is my opinion. You can dispute this opinion if you want, but that's how I think. And that is about it. Sorry for any grammatical mistakes, because English is not my first language. I live here in Saudi Arabia, and I just happen to listen to a lot of hip hop, and I search and learn about a lot of hip hop history as well. So thank you for watching, and have a great day. And if you have any opinions of your own, you can feel free to drop a comment down below, and I will try my best to have an conversation with you. And thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.